for Gulliver Sailing and a professional sailor as well. Brian, I want to say thanks for coming on and chatting with me for a little while about your experiences and your insight into the game. I know that this is an interesting time for everybody, so I always like to start with just how you doing, man?
No, I appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing. I feel honored to get the call to come talk to you. I'm doing all right. I'm doing well. I'm lucky I actually get to get on the water a little bit with access to my motorboat from the yacht club. So I'm doing all right.
That's great to hear, man. Because not everybody has that opportunity. So I know you're a water guy. So I know that you're appreciative of any chance you get. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Of getting out there. So, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions, within the Opti world about what pro sailing is and kind of how to get into it. So hopefully by talking to you a little while about your experiences in it, as well as, heading a high school program, and give everybody a sense of what it's like, what it takes, and, a different pathway after Optis that, some kids can aspire to. So my next question would be, for you, thinking back to your Opti days, how did you first get started in sailing at all?
I think my sort of introduction to sailing is pretty standard, like I think a lot of young sailors get into it these days. My father was an avid sailor. My mother was an avid sailor. And I think like when I was of age, right, 8 years old or around then, my father just put me in the local sailing program. I wasn't too serious in any other sports, but I did it all. I played the football in middle school and baseball and hockey. I did it all. But my father put me into sailing, as it was his passion to hopefully spread the wealth and make it mine, and it seemed to work, I guess.
And that's your father, Mark Kamilar, right?
Yeah, he put me into. I started at Miami Yacht Club when I was 8 years old. I think pretty standard upbringing into sailing. Started at 8 years old in summer camp, doing the very basic learn to sail stuff, and went down, I think, what would be the normal path from there.
But at some point, you kind of, got competitive and got bitten by the bug. When did that transition happen for you?
If I'm remembering correctly, I did the summer camp at Miami Yacht Club when I was 8, and I ended up transitioning over to Coral Reef Yacht Club maybe the next summer. And I think the transition happened just sort of like as you continue in the program. I don't know if I was any more competitive than the other sailor, or my father pushed me any more than the other parent. It was just sort of following the program if you stick with it. So I guess I enjoyed it. And the transition sort of happened into competitive sailing because I enjoyed it and wanted to continue to do it. And so the natural transition from learn to sail into Green Fleet, and that starts with practice races and into regattas, I think happened, within the first 2 years, again, sort of following what I think is the normal path into competitive sailing.
There's so much pressure on kids nowadays that maybe, we're both in our 30s, and maybe we came up in a slightly different, experience, but there's so much pressure on kids nowadays, and I've seen that they tend to freak themselves out, So for you, when you moved out of the Opti class, what was something that you were thinking about? Did you want to stay competitive, or maybe you wanted to let it go?
No, agreed. I think it was quite different back when we were growing up doing it in terms of pressures, or I was just lucky to not have high amounts of pressure coming from above me, whether from my parents or from the yacht club perspective or coach perspective or team. I don't remember having huge amounts of pressure on me to push to the next level. But what I think helped me, even in Optis and then beyond, to go to high school sailing and college and so forth, was I did have quite a bit of competitiveness in me, right? I wanted to be good. I wanted to be the best at each level. So my own competitiveness, I think, helped a lot. And then by the time I was, mature in my Opti career, going on to the high school and sort of club circuit in the 420, was pretty natural and pushed mostly by myself. I was doing well. I wanted to go to the next level. I wanted to be good at the next level. So it was only natural. But I think a lot of it came from me being competitive inside to say, let's go to the next level and be good at it.
So it was kind of it was a choice on your part to stick with it.
Exactly. Lucky that it was a choice on my part. I didn't even think twice about it. I knew that I was actually pretty excited to go sail in high school. And the idea of being on a team was something where a team really mattered, because there's Opti teams, right? But ultimately it's individual. But the idea of sailing on a team where your results matter and other sailors' results matter for your positions and points, and then on the club circuit, sailing with a partner and 2 people in a boat, it all excited me. I wanted to be a part of it.
That's awesome, because you know, the transition from single-handers, you know, as you're young into double-handed or, you know, more boats is sometimes tough. You know, I'm sure in your high school program there's kids that come and they all want to be skippers, but nobody wants to be a crew, you know. So to that effect, you know, you moved on from the trainer classes into college sailing and made somewhat of a name for yourself. You know, you were runner-up All-American, right, for the College Sailing Association?
I was a 3-time All-American and twice runner-up for Sailor of the Year.
Excuse me. Yeah, you know, we did a piece with Taylor Canfield, which you know very well, and he delved into the same topic, that at every single stage, at every single step, it's a willingness, it's a desire. So what made you want to, you know, make the jump from college sailing into pro sailing?
That's an interesting question. There wasn't really, I think, a point where I wanted to make the jump per se. How I fell into pro sailing was, again, having, like you say, sort of a resume coming out of college, and being available to sail, being willing to sail, and being willing to sort of say yes to any opportunity that came about. And it sort of snowballed from there. But getting into pro sailing that was almost potentially the first, like, not direct choice I made to go to the next level.
Really?
Yeah, I did not get out of college and say I'm going to be a pro sailor. Actually, the exact story is how I fell into pro sailing was just being in Miami, being here, being sort of recognized as someone that can sail well. I'm not saying I was like an all-star or earth-shattering sailor like Taylor was, kind of out of college already, winning a match race world championship. I didn't have any of that really, but I had enough of a resume that people would start to call me and say, "Are you available to sail?" And I actually sailed for quite a while. I want to say a year for free, like not a pro, just saying yes to any opportunity that I could, learning everything that I could from people that were far more experienced in those classes than I was. And then the sort of exact point when I started to become a pro sailor was I was just available to take the place of friends of mine, other sailors that had conflicts or couldn't necessarily commit to as many spots as they had being offered. And so they trusted that if they gave my name, I would do a good job. I would be someone that would represent them well and could be paid potentially to go do some sailing. So the exact spot was Stu McNay. I'm not sure if you know Stu, the many-time Olympian. We're similar sizes. And he called me a couple times saying, "Hey, I got conflicts for Olympic sailing stuff. Take my spot. This is how much I'm getting paid. You'd do a great job, I think." And that's actually exactly how I became a pro sailor, was taking his spot on some conflicts that he had with Olympic stuff. And then again, it snowballed from there. I guess I did a good job and more people started asking, and I felt comfortable in those sort of positions of power, we'll call them, right? Where the pro is doing some pretty important job on the boat, and it went from there.
You know, the way you put it, it sounds pretty simple, but I know that it took a lot of work and a lot of dedication. Being an owner on a boat, you know, you get your pick of the litter of who you get to work with. So, you know, if you don't do a good job, you're not going to be asked back on the boat, right?
Absolutely. I was going to say that this industry, the pro sailing industry, for better or worse, is the best at weeding out those that either can't do it. I say, like, don't do a good job, can't manage people, don't work hard, don't treat either the sailors or the owner they're with well, sort of that whole total package of willing to work hard, willing to treat people right and with respect, have the right balance of competitiveness versus coaching the whole team and helping everyone get better. But the industry is really good at weeding out those that aren't doing a good job for whatever reason. You just, like you say, you simply don't get asked back, or you don't get asked to the next gig.
So to that effect, what exactly does a pro sailor do? Because, I'm sure that the main job is you get paid to go and be a crew or a skipper on someone else's boat, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So can you walk us through what a day in the life looks like?
That's a good question. I actually thought about this for a while. So let's talk about like the definition of a pro sailor, right? For ISAF, the definition of a pro sailor is someone getting paid to enhance the performance of a boat while sailing. The while sailing thing is an interesting little 2 words that they added on at the end, and that's a whole nother topic of conversation. But to that extent, there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes to being a pro sailor. It's not just getting on the boat and going sailing, as nice as that is. And there are some people that have those jobs, and those guys are fortunate. We know who those guys are, but they've earned it, right? They've gone through the whole ranks of the process. But day in the life of a pro sailor, it starts with the logistics, for as simple or as complex as you want to make it, right? Pro sailors do all the dirty work too. They drive the boats around, they trailer the boats, they do the boat work. You're fixing, you're doing boat bottoms, you're making sure everything is in tip-top shape, you're launching the boat, you're organizing, always making sure you've got the right stuff. So there's the land-based, we'll call it, part of being a pro sailor, the logistics and dealing with the boat itself. And even the boat tied to the dock, we still call land-based, right? Dealing with getting the sails on the boat, getting the right parts you need, getting the water and food. I can't tell you how many times or on how many programs I am the snack-tician, right? Even though I may or may not have a pedigree for sailing, there are many, many, many instances where I'm the first one up going to get the sandwiches, and that's part of it all, right? You got to be the total package. So yes, there's the land-based logistics of it all the way down to getting the water and the sandwiches. Then there's the sailing aspect of it. Some pro sailors are in charge of the tuning. Some are in charge of making sure the bottom's clean. Some are in charge of looking at the forecast for the day. Granted, a lot of these get bundled up into roles that sailors take on, multiple of these things as the crew sizes get smaller. So we'll take a crew of 3 or 4, for example. The tactician's probably doing the weather forecasting for the day, the tuning of the boat, making sure the right sails are on the boat. And then, the boat captain is making sure all the right parts are on the boat. So there's many facets of what a pro sailor is. But I think the common theme across all of it is working hard and making sure you're organized and diligent and getting all of those things done. So there's pro sailors that do the tuning and the sails and the tactics, and then there's some that are good at making sure all the parts on the boat are correct, but it's pretty complex. So you asked me that question, man, I can kind of go forever on what a pro sailor is, but what's important is that you understand it is complex. There's a lot of roles involved, and you got to work well as a team with all the different people and get all the jobs done. That's what's the most important.
On any boat you get on, you have to, the basis of it is the team, unless you're sailing a fin. And even then, if you're mounting any sort of campaign, you've got people behind you, helping you out with these sort of things. So for you who, you recently went to the J70 Worlds, competed in Etchells at a very high level, a little bit more specific to those boats, because I think they're maybe the most popular or the biggest classes for pros right now. What do you think professional sailing has done positively for both the J70 class and the Etchells?
Positively is a good word to use there, because there's a lot of mixed opinions and emotions on it. But I think pro sailing, or pros in these classes, help to bring the level of sailing to unbelievable places. How deep these fleets are, how good all the competitors on the water are. It's making the sailing that we are going and doing the best I've ever done by far. It's incredibly competitive. The level and the detail into which these programs are being taken is astonishing. So all the boats out there are sailed so well. They're sailed at the highest level. they're sailing as fast and as tactically sound as you can. So I think first and foremost, what pros are bringing to the table is just making this racing unbelievably good. And the level of sailing, especially in those two fleets, just so high. I think it's helping to develop sailing, like specific to the Etchells. There's been so much development in terms of systems and sail design and trim and how they're trimmed. I mean, that boat is space age now, even though it's a very old design like we discussed. The systems in the boats are as good and as finite as any system in any boat now. I think it helps to get some sailors on the water that probably couldn't otherwise. Yes, the monetary means are there, but it makes sailing accessible because they have people that have the time and ability to get their boats places, get them rigged, get them on the water. And then these owners can show up and do sailing when they otherwise couldn't if they were relying on themselves or just friends per se. That's what probably sailing was before pros, right? It's like friends, professionals of the industry, but you couldn't potentially hire for your own program to get you on the water, get your boat there. So it's, I think, getting more people on the water in specific classes in certain situations that have the means and ability to do it. But I think overarching, it's just making the competitiveness of the sailing we're doing so incredibly high.
I think that's a really accurate description. These designs have been so modernized, and not just the Etchells, you know, boats like the Thistle, the Lightning, have been continue to be developed, and that's good to see, not only for, you know, the availability of work for people. You know, it's not just the pro sailors, it's the riggers, the sail making companies, you know, the boat builders, which is really nice to see. So, you know, talking a little bit more about the actual racing, you know, what's a regatta that kind of stands out to you, that you really remember, you know, very fondly?
Fond regatta. I just had a few recently. 2019 was a pretty decent year for me. There were two actually. I sailed the J70 Worlds that you mentioned in England, in a town in the south called Torquay. There's a discussion on how you pronounce that. In Torbay, which was the body of water. We put a lot of effort into that regatta. We were there for quite some time. And we ended up sixth out of, I don't know, 80 something boats. And that was quite a result, at least for our goals. We were still a relatively new team, not considered, I think, a top 10 boat, although we thought if we really did well, we could be close. But to come sixth was really, you know, the effort showed in that one. And then in October in 2019, sailed the J24 Worlds here at home in Miami. And I hadn't sailed a J24 in quite some time. I think last almost with you. You and I did some J24 sailing, right, back in the day, or we'd set up for some. So I hadn't sailed in like 5 years or more, and sailed the J24 Worlds here with, again, I think 80, 90 boats. I don't remember. And we came third. And that was with a brand new team. I'd only sailed with that team for 2 weeks. So that was certainly a highlight, at least recently. Big on the stage events and having a good result.
Now, what's a regatta that, you know, you don't remember so fondly?
Oh, well, all right. We're talking about keeping it close in the timeline. Bacardi Cup, just before sort of this whole pandemic stuff. Sailing again with a brand new team, first time sailing with the owner and the crew on board. And for him, having a pretty good event. You know, we were still very, we'll call it a learning experience for him, you know, results-wise, not necessarily toward the front, but for him, learning a ton. So he was pretty happy with it. But at the end, we had quite an incredible crash where a J70 bowsprit went through our backstay triangle and took our mast down pretty impressively. And there's a lot of video and pictures out there of it. And that was in the last race of the regatta. But that was, well, maybe we call it not fond. Those experiences and memories make you, I think, a better sailor. Like, well, the four of us will remember that, being on that boat for a lifetime, and it brings us closer for it. I mean, it's a bummer in the moment, but we can laugh about it afterwards.
And I think that's an experience that every sailor has, you know, in the back of their mind, because, you know, like you said, the good, will be there, and the bad experiences will be there. But the bad experiences help shape us as practicers of the art of sailing. Let me ask you, what bothers you out on the race course? What makes you want to just push yourself out there?
Well, I have a little bit of OCD. I like everything neat and prim and proper. So anything unorganized or not kept well certainly bothers me. So any program I'm on, the boat's going to be absolutely perfect and in perfect shape. So if maybe it's not necessarily on the race course per se, because it better be fixed by then. But if I get on a boat that's not organized or well kept, that would drive me nuts. What else? I guess it's not bother me per se, but I hold highly preparation and putting the time and the work in. So those, I'm not gonna say programs or people, because it's an overarching, you can't just walk in and expect to do well. And if there's those that have that sort of walking around the dock with that ideology, or a team or an owner or anyone, or you know what I'm trying to say, anyone that just expects results to come, that would bother me. There's a lot of time and effort and preparation that goes into all of these programs. Like we're talking about, all these pros bringing the level just into an incredible point. It's because there's a lot of time and effort put in. So no one can walk in and expect to be a pro sailor right off the bat. You got to put your time and your effort in. And then any programs that just come in and think they're gonna just clean up, that doesn't exist in a lot of the fleets I'm in. It takes a lot of time and effort. So those are probably two things that would bother me. Is not necessarily the term, but I think it goes in line with that.
I understand what you mean, it, like you said, you can't expect, especially, and I'm talking directly now to the youth sailors that are watching this. You can't expect results right away. Not even when you're a pro sailor. You have to put in the work. You have to trust the process. And if you happen to sail with a team, or maybe on a double-handed boat, you have to work with them. And in my experience, I've known you for a long time now. In my experience, that's just your MO, is that you're the guy that works with everybody and makes it happen. And you don't tolerate that attitude, as well as coming unprepared, because that I agree with. I think that preparation, and I think any sailor of any caliber can agree. And in your world right now, what's it like working with, let's say, a non-professional team?
I think it starts with, like you sort of said, let's say you start to work with a new team and you're the only professional on board. It's setting the expectations of, okay, time and effort will pay off. Like, this is a sport where time and effort help exponentially. So if I were to walk onto a program that didn't have any pros on it, or just working with a group of sailors that aren't professionals, granted, we all have responsibilities and we all understand life is a lot of work, and it's sometimes tough to get out on the water as much as you'd like. I'd say first and foremost, start to try and set up a program where, obviously to the best of your ability and what makes sense for you, practice, put some effort into making sure your boat is in tip-top shape, put some time and effort into the program, as we sort of keep talking about, right? Even if you're just a weekend warrior going out and sailing, your local 1 day a month day series. Actually, I just had this argument with my father at the dinner table not long ago. Granted, I'm at the dinner table 15 feet away from him. He's in the kitchen and I'm in the living room. And my uncle, who's a sailmaker and a huge sailor and professional sailor in his own right, we're arguing with my father that, even a day of practice with him and his crew of 8 or 9 people on his 35-foot boat or whatever it is would help so much. And he's like, no, if I just had a bigger main, that would help. I said, it's the whole program. So just someone like my father, no pros on board. I said, go out and practice a little. Go down to your boat and take off. Just go down. I have a good buddy who well, Victor. He's obsessed with it. He's like, go down and just make it a point to take 5 things, no matter how big or small, off the boat that you don't need. So it's something as simple as that, right? Putting some thought, time, and effort into your program, even if it's not professional whatsoever.
That's really solid advice, and I believe strongly in simplifying things. A lot of times we tend to overcomplicate ourselves as sailors, and I think that's just general life advice, But talking now and maybe coming back a little bit towards your youth sailing experiences, what do you think a kid coming out of Optis needs to do, or a quality they need to have in order to, continue that, not to say professionalization of their sailing life, but continue that rigor, that discipline that maybe one day will carry them to the furthest reaches of the sport, if maybe that's their hope.
It's actually interesting to think about this, and I gave this some thought. When we're in Optis, we're potentially putting in the most time we'll ever be able to put in to the sport, and we almost don't even realize it, right? I don't think when I was in Optis, I even realized how much time I was really putting in to sailing and to my program and my effort and my campaign. And yes, the parents and coaches are there to make it the most structured. And then as you move on to each level, right, even the next level being high school and club sailing, your parents are a bit less involved. The coaches are relying on you to get your boat rigged more in the water, or be at practice on time, or to get to regattas or be at practice, right? So what I'm trying to say is, as each level, as you move on to each next step, next level, the responsibility is more on you as a sailor to continue to practice with the same effort, bring the same level of desire and intensity and motivation to your own program, right? Because back to, I'll repeat it, in Optis, we don't even realize it, but you're probably spending the most amount of time you will ever sail in Optis. High school and college get close. College, you might sail as much as in Optis. But again, in college, it's on you to show up to practice. It's on you to make your, regimented schedule. So the responsibility falls more on you with each step to continue to be professional, be motivated, be organized, and take the program, your program, where you want to, right? So if what I would say to an Opti sailor is, don't take for granted how much you actually get to sail, and you don't even realize how much high level, high intensity training you're getting to do right now. And it unfortunately will go down exponentially as you go to each next step, and become exponentially more on you to make it happen, right? Because your parents and coaches will take less and less of a role in how much sailing and how much high level sailing you do.
Yeah, I had never thought about it that way, that, the training, just the amount of water time, the amount of tiller time these kids are getting, the amount of days out on the water, and the coaching that some of these kids are receiving is extremely hard to find, or extremely expensive to put together in other classes once you move out of it. So yeah, I never thought about it that way. I think that's a really great point that you make, and as well as the advice, the key, I think, and the also the kind of theme I've been hearing so far, talking to you and talking to Taylor and a couple other pros, is that at every step it has to be a decision that you take. It has to be a desire from your part. It can't be mom or dad pushing you the whole time. It can't be coach pushing you the whole time. It has to fall more and more on your shoulders as you mature. Because the other thing is, Optis, the age group, they're not really able to carry that alone, let's say. I think it's few and far in between that from the get-go. As soon as they hop into Opti for the first time, they're just going after it.
Optis really are the most time you're going to get, and then we're talking about, oh well, what good? You see how it's all continuing along the same sort of platform. Well, once you become an adult and you're working hard, you got to rely on other people to just get your boat in the water for you, and you're not getting as much time on the water as you want. So unfortunately, sailing days, unless you truly are a pro sailor, and I'm lucky that I get to sail a lot, days on the water get hard to come by with each next step.
Do you sometimes struggle with finding that, let's say work-life balance? Like, is there ever a point where you're like, no, I don't want to go, sail with this team. I want to relax?
Those thoughts definitely go through my head. Again, like I said, I'm lucky that I get to sail probably 100 days a year. And many more of those are coaching the high school sailing team and being at regattas. So I'm involved, I think, in sailing, whether it be coaching, at a regatta coaching, or pro sailing. Let's probably call it like 200 days a year, maybe more, maybe 250 days a year. There's definitely times, as I think with any job, right, or anything that you do, there's definitely times that that it gets draining's not the right word, but certainly to be a lot of work, or a lot of, hours upon hours of giving something max effort certainly makes it difficult for anything. You watch this Last Dance with Michael Jordan, at the end of it, they're beyond exhausted. They say they are incinerated as humans, right? Like they don't even, that's how much effort they're putting it into it. But no, I think I have a pretty good balance of it. I find that the coaching, high school and being at regattas coaching are quite different from the pro sailing, even though pro sailing is a lot of coaching and it's a lot of similar things and long days. But I feel like, at least as like sort of a work day, we'll call it, they're quite different. There are definitely times, at least when, it becomes the travel season, where I find myself 5 weekends in a row flying somewhere, and I get home on a Sunday and I'm like, man, all I want to do is turn the key and the motor turns on and grab a beer with my friends and just go motor around. Yeah, there's definitely times where I'd rather just be at home with my friends and just be on a motorboat and hang out. But no, I still really enjoy the sailing. So at this point, there's not, I said almost before this pandemic that I was like, man, I'm getting to a point where I'm sailing a lot. Maybe it's time that I scale down a little bit of it, but no, I'm as fired up as ever to do some sailing. And I'm lucky that I get to sail different classes. So all these different classes of sailing are quite different, and different people, and different, the way even boats are prepared. It keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting.
I think that's good. And for you, I mean, this pandemic got everybody by surprise, I think. And, it's a chance to kind of slow down and maybe reconnect with the sport in a way that you hadn't been able to in a while. For you, with so much traveling and so much sailing, and for the kids, maybe losing focus on the things that really matter at that stage, in whatever class that they're doing, not just optis. But speaking on high school sailing, you also run a successful high school sailing program over there at Gulliver. You know, eh, and a lot of opti kids and families, looking at that next step in the sport, maybe have some misconceptions on what high school sailing is like, and what it kind of requires. So, what is the biggest change from, an opti or let's pre-teenager sailing life to getting into a high school program?
I think it falls back on what we discussed earlier. At least for me, one of the most important qualities I want in a sailor, as I think any coach I think would agree, is coming with the effort and desire to get better. You don't have to come and be the best sailor on the planet, because I welcome all abilities, right? I welcome sailors that have never sailed once in their life, and I have some stories on successes of students coming to me never sailing once in their life and getting recruited to top colleges in the country after 4 years in my program. But I want sailors on my team to have the effort and desire to improve themselves and to help their teammates improve. So I put effort on it truly being a team sport. And as cliche as like the football coach says, we're only as good as our weakest link. Well, I think that's really important on the high school level and for high school programs, because yes, inevitably there's going to be sailors that have more experience and are better than others on the team. But if I've got my one top guy getting pushed by 6 other boats, as hard on the race course, that top sailor is going to get exponentially better. So what's important is that you join a high school team with the idea that it is a team, and that you are there to help others get better as well as improve yourself. And I think those are key qualities to make any high school team be successful in their respective districts. But I would say the biggest transition is in optis, ultimately, it's your boat, it's you. Yes, you want your teammates to be better and help you push each other in practice, but at regattas, it is pretty individual. When you jump to the next level, it becomes team very quickly.
Can you walk us through kind of like the dynamics of a high school team? Just because it's a format that's very unfamiliar to Opti sailors and sailors getting into high school sailing, especially with the idea that you might not go and race at a regatta. You might be sitting there on the dock all day.
So high school, pretty unique to, well, high school and college follow pretty much the same rules and sort of way that it's all done, right? But high school sailing is unique that you can substitute sailors in and or sail different sailors for your school at any different point throughout a given day. So when a school like Gulliver goes to a regatta, you technically have to field 2 boats worth of sailors. So you have 2 teams almost out on the water. So you show up and you get given a boat, and that's A division. So you have 2 sailors, a skipper and a crew, go out and they'll sail 2 races. And then they'll come back in to land and give their boat to 2 of their teammates. So 2 other sailors on the team will go out and sail 2 races, come back in, and then that rotation continues throughout the whole day. But it becomes a team sport in that all those scores count together. So it is not just your races that matter, it is your teammates' races that matter just as much as yours. So you have 2 sets of boats going out and doing races, and all their scores count together. And then at any given point throughout the day, you can substitute in a different sailor, a different skipper, a different crew. Now there are some specific rules about who can go in where, and that, again, that's a different topic and a bit more granular than we have to get into. But your question of you can go to a regatta and potentially not sail, well, yes, I can. Let's say I have 4 really good skippers and we go to regatta with all 4 of them, and my A division skipper goes in, is doing really well. My B division skipper goes in and does really well. There's no reason to switch them out. So you could potentially be sitting on the dock all day, but watching, hopefully learning, supporting your team. Same with crews. I call it like, when I talk to my athletic director at the school who doesn't know much about sailing, he still equates it to kind of like football. As it's windy, you put the bigger person in. When it's not windy, you put the smaller people in so you can substitute, and you can sort of play football with the different sizes and abilities and venues and who's better in shifty conditions versus, open water conditions. So, you have the flexibility of sailing much different people in different situations.
Thanks for that. I'm sure that there's going to be a few sailors that are going to learn a lot just from that, 2-minute explanation. Because it's not often discussed or explained enough. Hopefully that'll help somebody understand it. Maybe, hey, apply to Gulliver sailing.
That's right.
So I think actually our time is running out. So before we go, I wanted to ask you one last thing. Is there's a lot of kids out there right now wishing that they could sail, and as the world slowly makes its way back out on the water, what would you say to to them who still can't sail and want to?
Certainly don't take for granted all we get to do and out on the water, right? Our sport's incredible, and if you really sit back, and now we all are, just thinking about the days we have on the water and where we've traveled to with sailing and what our sport has really afforded us, right? And what we get to see and do. And we talked about what are some good points and some bad points of regattas, but what's funny is I can sit back and remember just days. I can remember sailing through some crazy storm, or I can remember sailing on a picture perfect, not a cloud in the sky day against the walls in Lake Garda, right? So what I would say is, something like this hopefully makes you sit back and really appreciate what our sport gives us. Even it's as simple as being able to daydream about just incredible picturesque places you've sailed, or a day on the water in some storm, or some crazy story about your mast falling down, or you ran into another boat, and everyone's got the stories, right? So it being taken away from us, which I guess is what technically it has happened. Make sure, I think, you sit back and really think about how much we are lucky and get to enjoy such an incredible, unique sport that 99% of the world has no idea about. Like, they don't even understand that every day when we leave Gulliver and we go sail on the water out on some beautiful sunny afternoon, but the basketball team's stuck inside on the court. Granted, they're doing what they love to do. We're lucky that our venues and our settings and how we get to deal with nature is quite unique.
you know, I wish that this turns out to be a net positive for sailing, and a lot of people discover the sport through this because, you know, it's the original social distancing sport, right? Brian, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you sharing your insights. You know, we hope to have you back sometime in the future, and hopefully we'll see you out in Coconut Grove pretty soon.